A very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and a warm welcome to all distinguished speakers, panelists, colleagues, and participants joining us today. On behalf of the Asian Disaster Preparedness Center, through the Asian Preparedness Partnership, and with the support of Gates Foundation, I warmly welcome you to the first webinar of the series, A Decade of Localization in Practice, from Sustainable Partnerships to Locally Led Preparedness. Today's webinar, Sustaining Localization, the Pathways for Multi-Stakeholder Partnership, provides an opportunity to reflect on a decade of localization efforts since the World Humanitarian Summit in 2016. We are pleased to have with us senior representatives, practitioners who will share strategic perspectives, country experiences, and practical lessons from the region. We will now move to the opening remarks. It is my honor to invite Mr. Aslam Parvez, the Executive Director of Asian Disaster Preparedness Center, to deliver his opening remarks. Sir, may I kindly invite you to take the floor, please.
Very good morning. Can you hear me? Is this yes?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So first of all, thank you very much for hosting this very important webinar. Just a reflection, 10 years has now passed, and perhaps in another 2 months, we will be again meeting as a group in Phnom Penh, Cambodia, sometime in July, to again reflect how far from this commitment that we made, the pledge that we took in 2016, that Asian Disaster Preparedness Center, with the help of Gates Foundation, we will do something unique, we will do something meaningful, making local actions for disaster preparedness a sustaining efforts. Of course, there's a lot of good examples and good progress done, but as we know that every time we move to a better preparedness, we are tested against a lot of uncertainties. And keeping that in mind, I personally have been in this journey since 2016, and I still believe that local actions, locally led actions, community actions, community-based actions, whatever name that you give, the journey of localization in ADPC has been quite inspiring to me. We may not have all the good things out of this 10-year journey. I would also say that we may not have seen all the good things that is happening, because to measure the success of disaster preparedness is very, very difficult. There's not all the time tangible thing that you can see, but we have seen now globally a large number of interventions are being tagged or being focused as locally led. At least we claim or we say that a number of interventions in Asia and the Pacific is influenced by this particular investment. And I'm quite very thankful for our colleagues of Gates Foundation believing in us and all the time supporting us, but at the same time shaping this journey as well. I mean, I recall the last meeting we had in Colombo, and in the way we sat together, the way our colleagues from Gates Foundation and others, we really critically analyze. And from there, I think this whole journey that, how we now make in a couple of years this locally led agenda in the countries as self-sustaining or more meaningful, mainstream into the local development action plan. And I'm very thankful also for the team of the Asian Preparedness Partnership, together with the different country chapters, that during the time they have demonstrated. They have demonstrated during the time of DPR. They also will going to demonstrate it this year, as we believe that this is the super new year, and we perhaps will be seeing more and more localized problem, more and more local level stress, whether it is heat, whether it is drought, whether it is typhoon and others. But I also would like to claim that, my journey also with one of the speaker today, Vimla, also started, I think, almost 2 decades ago, Vimla, if you recall. And I really commend that, you have been all the time there. Of course, Vincent, I have met you recently, but certainly with Vimla, I can say that I have seen you for the last 20 years in Laos, and a strong supporter of ADPC's efforts, a strong supporter of the locally led initiative. So I'm really very thankful that you accepted this invitation as well. Colleagues, I'm not in a very what we call office environment. I just had to come for medical checkup. So, but looks like I'm in a much better place from the background. So no filters here. But certainly I would not be able to sit all together for this workshop, but this is being recorded. I certainly would like to see. And at the end, I must also commend and also must thank Dr. Sisira. Perhaps you will not still be very satisfied with a lot of the results that is coming out of the APP program, but the way his personal dedication, the way his personal things all the time, and most of the time he take out all his frustration on me, which is fine. But I really thank him for his perseverance, the patience, and also the proactiveness through which individually manage so much. And what we see now, not only in the 7 countries, but beyond all our member countries, all our RCC member countries, they really look at this program, as one of a good example. So thank you, Susira, for maintaining this. I know that we still have to burn a lot of our fingers. We still have to aim very high, but we will be there. So thank you very much, Roni, taking this further. And thank you, Ankit, thank you, Mona, and all the colleagues who are part of the APP program. And you have my full support. I take the full support of the whole organization. I bring the whole support of the board. I bring the whole support of the RCC members. Please let me know whatever further I have to do to make this particular journey the most meaningful in ADPC history. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Aslam sir, for your thoughtful opening remarks and setting the strategic context for today's discussion. We will now move to the session to set the context to provide an overview of ADPC's localization priority and the Asian Preparedness Partnership model. I am pleased and honored to invite Dr. Sisira Madura Peramma, Director at ADPC. Sir, may I kindly invite you to take the floor?
Thank you, Ankit. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you so much. First of all, on behalf of ADPC and APP, we'd like to warmly welcome all the colleagues, those who have joined from multiple regions and multiple countries. So I'll take about 5 minutes to talk about how we look at localization within ADPC and within broader APP partnership. So when I was preparing for this particular talk, I was going through the journey. It has been a kind of 10 years or 1 decade. It's not a short time, but I felt like we started yesterday and too much to do as well. And when we look at this, I was trying to organize my talk around few areas. Firstly, I want to talk how APP and ADPC look at this localization strategically. One of the most important part before we talked about any strategy, any governance mechanisms, any instrument, the first thing first is the like-minded people. I recall when we start brainstorming about these so-called localizations or locally led DRR processes, there were a few champions, and of course, one of them, I'm very glad that one of them, Dr. Valerie, is in the panel. This is 10 years ago, or 12 years ago, when I met her in Louisiana, in the USA, and was trying to discuss, brainstorm, convince ourselves that there is a value for localization and locally led actions, and inviting Valerie to come and see what we are doing in Cambodia with a very small NGO called Padek by that time. So, so bringing like-minded people, the passion that they want to pursue, as well as their wisdom and vision is the most important part. You can have so many financing tools and solutions. You can have so many governance mechanisms to your, platform and others. But unless you have like-minded visionary people, those who like to sometimes brutally challenge, but going through very difficult path, is a must kind of thing, I would say. Without such like-minded people and visions, localization is not going to work, and it's not possible. It's not. Yes, many organizations today use localization and locally led processes, but the journey itself is not that smooth. I wanted to make it very clear and straight at the beginning of my talk. So building on like-minded people, visionary leaders and champions. The second part is basically the institutions behind those individuals and champions. Here, we built on ADPC Intergovernmental Charter, which has been ratified by our member countries. It has the legal and institutional provisions clearly identifying the nexus or the breach between the government, civil society, and the private sector, among others, academia, media, among others. Sometimes we don't like to be branded or named as brokers, but if you believe or if you think that localization would happen with autopilot mode, I think we can wish for it, but unless you have you can use diplomatic words such as moderators, facilitators, or enablers, or you can use brutal words like brokers. But unless you bring this bridge through institutions, those who like to play that role, it is very difficult, if not impossible, to bring different sectors to work together on the same agenda, because they have different ways of working, they have different cultures and norms, they have different governance mechanisms, and they have different priorities. Mission can be same. So this is another part. The institution, those who like to back the champion, institution, those who like to take the pain before they achieve the gain. This is the second part that I like to highlight. And as ADPC, certainly we took that pain and will continue to take that pain. With, of course, much happiness, right? So that we know the path is rough, but we know that there will be a change as we all envision. The third, most of the organization talked about localization. If you look at their institutional strategies or their institutional strategic action plan, you hardly see localization reflected. Whether it is national disaster management as a strategy if it is a government organization, whether it is a business plan if it is the private sector, whether it is a annual or multi-year program of the civil society. Unless it is embedded, unless it is institutionalized in your institutional programs or policies, we can have multiple flowery words, but the localization will not be realized. In ADPC, in our 2030 strategy, which was approved by our board last year, the localization is one of the primary priority areas, what we call priority actions. Out of 15 priority areas, localization is one of our priority. And localization is in our strategic action plan. These are very, very important enablers. The next is innovative financing. Catalytic financing. Don't expect a world where external agencies would come and rescue us. We've seen the recent most disasters, including Cyclone Ditta in Sri Lanka, flood in Indonesia, flood in Thailand, earthquake in Myanmar, you name it. There is no debate that local organization will play a role. Certainly, they are. It's not a new thing. They would. But the financing, whatever available, will be catalytic, should be catalytic. Don't expect external financing to fill the gap. It will not happen. Specifically, it will not happen in this era. So how would you bring this locally led financing, innovative but sustainable? Unless we have such mechanism, unless we develop a model around those locally led financing, we can continue to talk about localizations. But if you are trying to negotiate, as maybe 5 years ago, we were talking about grand bargain process, right? We wanted to influence the external donors to give bigger funding to the local organization. The ecosystem has changed. It is no longer allocating huge amount of money from international to local. It is mobilizing local financing. The game has changed. So how do we find that innovative, sustainable, locally led financing for DRR and humanitarian response is another challenge that we got to address. The last but not least, I want to highlight one part, which is the regional and global advocacy. Dr. Valerie, you may recall when we met in 2016 for the World Humanitarian Summit in Istanbul, only few of us were talking about localization or locally led DRR or locally led humanitarian response. And we were like maybe naughty group making the voice in almost every global forum, every side event, every, so-called Ignite stage during those era. But today, of course, I wouldn't claim that this is just because of ADPC, but as a community, including yourselves with the donors, when I look at today, like big financing mechanisms such as Green Climate Fund, they have a locally led climate action framework, which is multi-billion financing fund, world biggest climate fund in this context. When I look at adaptation fund, they have a separate window for locally led adaptation, LLA. So we shouldn't be upset. We shouldn't be frustrated. I think our voice, our noise, our advocacy has already paid the dividends. And most of the multilaterals, most of the financing mechanisms, most of the development or multilateral development institutions have already recognized, have already created funding windows, have already developed programs around locally led actions. And the challenge, as I mentioned, is how do we enable locally led financing in the countries that we are working? That is the challenge, I guess, we all need to work together in the coming decade. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sisira, for outlining our localization priorities, challenges, and how will we move forward in a strategic way ahead. Considering the time, we would now proceed to the next presentation, which will focus on the challenging in sustaining a multi-stakeholder localization model. It is my pleasure to invite Ms. Ronilda Ko, Program Manager, Localization at ADPC. Ms. Ronnie, over to you.
Thank you, Ankit, and good morning, everyone. For those who are actually members of the Asian Preparedness Partnership and the viewers who are not members of the APP. My presentation draws from the experience of the member countries, 7 member countries of the Asian Preparedness Partnership. The presentation focuses on challenges in sustaining a multi-stakeholder localization model. I will flip the question or the presentation with the question: how do we sustain a multi-stakeholder localization model? So in this regard, the question I will tackle is on how we sustain a multi-stakeholder localization model, particularly such as the Asian Preparedness Partnership, where we actually have in each country multi-stakeholder partners government in charge of the disaster risk management in the country, private sector, mostly chambers of commerce, but in Philippines, we also have the Philippine Disaster Resilience Foundation, and then civil society networks, and in some cases, we also have the academia in the partnership. Now, let me first clarify the scope of this webinar. When we talk of sustainability, there are two aspects that we're talking about with respect to the APP. One is institutionalization. The second is financing. With respect to institutionalization, there are two aspects also that we're talking about. Okay, one is the anchoring or embedding of the partnership within each country, okay, within their national disaster risk management systems, as well as the embedding of each partnership and their work in their own organizations. Today's webinar focuses on the institutionalization aspect of sustainability. Why? Because institutionalization depends on whether the partnership itself, the multi-stakeholder partnership, and the work that they have in the country become actually part of the system, and not just a project, not just a temporary coordination system or mechanism, not just simply donor-driven, and also not personality-based or focal-based engagement, but rather the partnership, okay, and the work on localization across the thematic areas of disaster risk management, for preparedness, response, recovery, to also climate resilience, okay, become part of the national DRM systems, their own organizational processes, institutional priorities, as well as formal structures and mandates. Let me now go to the institutional challenges and the recommended house of institutionalizing the partnership in each country. This actually draws from the experience of the countries, as well as in the APP Regional Steering Committee that we held in July 2025 in Colombo, Sri Lanka. The first challenge, okay, is something that we all have at the back of our mind. Okay, we do understand, and Dr. Cicera underscored this, and this is the most challenging one. And this pertains to the basic nature of an organization. Okay, that an organization by itself is a system unto itself. They have their own mandates, their own operational realities. They have their own priorities, their own culture, their own accountability mechanisms within their organizations. With that, bringing in a multi-stakeholder partnership is actually a systems of systems. And this is where the challenge lies, okay? And with this, even then that we have this at the back of our mind, okay? The challenge for us is actually to bring it forth into our consciousness, so that at the onset of a program or a project, sustainability is not at the end. It's not the end, of the process, but rather at the outset, a thoughtful consideration of this nature of an organization, and also the systems of multi-stakeholder partnerships, so that strategies are therefore carefully thought out and laid out at the beginning of a program or a project. The way to go as a recommendation from the partnerships is to actually, one, to identify the collective value add of a partnership, the things that they can do as a partnership rather than doing it individually as organizations. And this is something that can drive the alignment among multiple organizational systems and stakeholders. The second one across organizations is recognizing and leveraging the advantages of different stakeholders. And now within organizations, it's embedding them, the partnership and its work, into their legal frameworks, their policies, their programs, their processes. The second one is pertaining to coordination mechanisms and the secretariat capacity. We understand that when we bring different organizations into a partnership, we suffer often from varying levels of engagement, competing priorities, their own operational rhythms, and limited time. And therefore, a recommendation for institutionalization is having a dedicated secretariat or coordination mechanism for all parties. And this is to have a clear governance system as well as defined roles and responsibilities for sustained collaboration. The third one is on leadership turnover and weak institutional memory. Often when we choose partners, we have individual champions, we have focal persons, we build also informal relationships within institutions. Okay, with this, there is a need for successful succession planning, such as successor generation programs, and of course establishing a very systematic knowledge management, so that when there's a turnover of leadership or staff taking care of the programs or projects, institutional knowledge is not disrupted and the collaboration is continued. The point here for institutional memory and ownership is not merely within the individual representation, but rather as an organization. The fourth challenge is uneven institutional capacities. We find this because different organizations bring in different expertise. For government, for instance, there is definite expertise on disaster risk management, but not maybe on the social processes inclusion, which is civil society is very strong in implementation. Private sector has innovation capacities and academia research, but might not actually be within the DRRM realm. And so understanding uneven institutional capacities would be very important in terms of aligning multiple organizations for a sustainable, locally led or localization agenda in the country. And therefore, long-term institutional capacity, exchange learning, not only regional among countries, but as well as within countries would be beneficial for the partners. The fifth challenge is on data and information management, and this has been underscored, in fact, by private sectors in our partnership, whereby data for them is very important. So understanding, how government data can be accessed, the standardization of data and the use of data down the line across different partners, the civil society partners, the private sector businesses, local businesses, as well as academic institutions, to actually propel also DRM or climate resilience within their constituents would actually be beneficial. The last challenge that we found is strengthening engagement with local governments, because institutionalization of the localization needs not only horizontal alignment, but also especially critical is the vertical alignment, and that goes down the line in terms of subnational governments, and local governments in this regard would really be important to engage as a part of the preparedness partnerships within the countries. And the vertical integration would actually necessitate embedding localization within local DRM structures as well. Okay? And with this, in summary, let me point out the challenges in three categories. So there are challenges that are structural and governance challenges. There are challenges that are actually operational and enabling challenges. And there's also a challenge which is very significant in terms of talking about localization. And this is multi-level institutionalization, which means bringing in the local government at the outset of the partnership. So this is the institutionalization challenges when it comes to the sustainability of multi-stakeholder partnerships. The financing challenge, I'd just like to mention, though this is not the focus of our webinar today. Okay? The financing challenge, and this is about sustaining long-term financing for multi-stakeholder localization partnerships. Dr. Cesar has underscored this. that we cannot be heavily reliant on external donor support, short-term projects, rigid funding structures as our partners are looking for. What is it that really empowers them when it comes to funding? Okay, and one of this is flexible funding mechanisms. And this is where our Asian Disaster Readiness Fund that has actually funded all this locally led, sub-national implementation among our Asian preparedness partnerships in the 6-7 countries have been valuable. And so there are actually pathways for this, more predictable and diversified financing. Okay, I have mentioned flexible funding mechanisms. Stronger domestic ownership. That means how do you access national budgets, government budgets, private sector mobilization. Okay, what is the contribution of academia, and also the civil society in this regard. So institutional budgets for partnership functions and localization efforts should also be set aside for sustained collaboration. Therefore, in conclusion, sustaining a multi-stakeholder localization model requires more than collaboration. It requires more than all these meetings, joint actions, joint activities, coordination. It requires institutional ownership, systemic embedding in systems, processes, programs within institutions, structures, coordinated governance among them. The Secretariat is just one example. Long-term capacities, and of course, sustained financing. With this, let us now listen, of course, to two of our countries who have addressed or are addressing the challenges of institutionalizing their partnerships, okay, within the national DRM systems as well as within their organizations. We have two countries that are progressing. One is the Laos Disaster Preparedness Partnership, and the other is the Philippine Preparedness Partnership. Thank you so much for listening to this session.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ronnie, for your insightful presentation and leading the whole webinar towards our two country presentations. We will now move to the first country presentation, and I am honored to invite Ms. Vimala, Director, Disaster Control and Recovery Division, Department of Social Welfare, Laos PDR. By way of introduction, Ms. Vimala is the Head of Disaster Control and Recovery Division under the Department of Social Welfare, Secretariat of Central Disaster Management Committee, Ministry of Labour and Social Welfare of Laos PDR. She brings over 18 years of experience in disaster management and humanitarian assistance with active engagement in ASEAN and the regional disaster management training programs. She will speak on institutionalizing the Laos Disaster Preparedness Partnership in the National Disaster Risk Management Coordination Mechanism. Ms. Vimala, may I kindly invite you to take the floor.
Thank you very much. Very good morning, everyone. And thank you very much to ADPC for giving me the opportunity to share the experience of the Laos Disaster Preparedness Partnership, or LDPP. On behalf of LDPP, I would like to present the LDPP has been institutionalized within the National Disaster Risk Management Coordination Mechanism in Laos PDR. Next slide, please. I think this old one. Can you share the new one that I gave you? Sorry, this one is the old one.
Ms. Vimala, we are having a slight technical glitch. If you can try sharing your screen, if possible.
Yeah, I already sent to Rory. Can you share, Rory?
Okay, 1 second. You this one.
I cannot open for my.
Yes. Okay. Ms. Vimala, we'll just finalize the presentation, and in meantime, I would swap the screen with Philippines presentation. I really apologize for the inconvenience, but I'll get the presentation. And in meantime, we will now proceed to the second country experience, where it is my pleasure to invite Mr. Vicente Thomas, Director 3, Disaster Preparedness Service, Office of Civil Defense, Philippines. By way of introduction, Director Thomas brings a distinguished background spanning military service, local governance, social welfare, humanitarian response, and national disaster preparedness. A career officer in the Armed Forces of the Philippines, he held senior command and strategic staff positions, including Deputy and Acting Commander of Joint Task Force, National Capital Region, and Contingent Commander to the United Nations Mission in Liberia. Director Vic will speak on advancing disaster preparedness, institutionalizing a 4-in-1 Philippine preparedness partnership. Director Vic, may I kindly invite you to share your presentation and begin your session. Thank you.
Audio. Check our audio. Unmute. Okay. Hello. Good morning. Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Thank you, sirs. Thank you, ma'ams. A pleasant morning or evening to everyone, esteemed colleagues, representatives of national preparedness partnerships from around the world, and distinguished partners in resilience. It is an absolute honor to present before you today the journey of the Philippines, a journey marked by immense climate vulnerabilities, but more importantly, by an unyielding spirit of innovation in disaster risk reduction and management. Today, we're going to dive deep into a critical structure or structural evolution. We are exploring how the Philippines is actively transitioning from a traditional project-led partnership model into an institutionalized permanent national infrastructure known as PhilPrep, the Philippine Preparedness Partnership. For many of us running national platforms, we know that the exhausting cycle. A grant arrives, a beautiful partnership is formed. Pilot projects achieve remarkable success. The grant expires and the momentum slowly dissipates. Today's presentation is a direct response to the universal challenge. We will unpack how our unique 4-in-1 or quadripartite model, uniting government, the private sector, civil society, and the academe in shifting away from temporary project-bound interventions to become an indelible state-sanctioned organ of national disaster preparedness. Over the next 20 minutes or so, I will provide you with a comprehensive look at our strategic roadmap or localized best practices and the precise institutional mechanisms we are deploying to anchor this partnership into the policy and blended financial streams. Our hope is that this serves as an operational blueprint for your respective nations as we collectively seek to turn localized resilience into a permanent global reality. Let us begin by addressing the elephant in the room, so to speak, a challenge that I am certain resonates with every single national preparedness partnership. We call it the project to system gap, or colloquially, pilot fatigue. Historically, disaster preparedness in developing and climate vulnerable nations has operated on a project-by-project basis. International donors provide funding for a 2-year or 3-year cycle. We set up secretariats, we conduct community mapping, we distribute early warning radios, and we celebrate our metrics. But what happens when the clock runs out? The funding ends, the trained community leaders relocate, the project staff disperse, and the country drops back down to a baseline of vulnerability until the next disaster triggers the next grant cycle. This creates a state of structural amnesia and fragmented coordination. Now look at the right side of the screen. This is where PhilPrep is steering the narrative. Our goal is to close this gap by building an institutionalized system integrator. Institutionalization means embedding the partnership directly into the legal framework, the national budget, and the daily operating procedures of the state. Instead of relying purely on international philanthropy, we are building a mechanism where domestic public funds, private capital, civil society networks, and academic research are legally bound together. We are moving from a handshake agreement between 4 well-meaning sectors into a structural engine that survives political transitions, funding cliffs, and leadership changes. To understand how we are doing this, you must first understand the legal landscape of the Philippines. We are not operating in a policy vacuum. In fact, the Philippines is one of the most progressive, comprehensive disaster risk reduction laws in the world. Humility aside. Republic Act 10121, enacted in 2010, this law shifted our country from a purely reactive disaster response mindset to a proactive, decentralized disaster risk reduction and management framework. It legally mandates that every local government unit allocates at least 5% of the estimated revenue to a local DRRM fund. However, a paradox emerged. We had an abundance of policy, but scarcity of structural integration. The government executed its mandates, the private sector ran its corporate social responsibility programs, civil society groups protected localized communities, and the universities conducted isolated scientific studies. They were all running parallel marathons, looking at the same finish line, but never crossing it together. This is where PhilPrep found its purpose. PhilPrep was designed not to replace the National DRRM Council or duplicate state functions, but to serve as the definitive multi-stakeholder system integrator. We are the connective tissue. We take the statutory power of the government, the operational velocity of the private sector, the grassroots trust of civil society, and the predictive intelligence of academia, and weave them into a single cohesive rope. Now, let us dissect the anatomy of this 4-in-1 partnership. For an NPP to be truly resilient, it cannot be top-heavy with government officials, nor can it be entirely reliant on NGOs. It requires a quadripartite balance where every sector brings a unique, irreplaceable competitive advantage. First, we have government represented by the Office of Civil Defense, or OCD. They provide the ultimate statutory authority, macro logistics, and the power to institutionalize the standards across our 82 provinces and thousands of municipalities. However, government bureaucracy can sometimes slow down immediate operational pivots. That brings us to our second pillar, the private sector, represented by the Philippine Disaster Resilience Foundation, or PDRF. The PDRF is one of the world's premier private sector networks for DRR. They bring the speed of business, a rapid supply chain restoration, telecommunications backup, and the immense logistical requirements or networks of airlines, supermarket chains, and energy utilities. Third is civil society, represented by the Center for Disaster Preparedness, or CDP. They are our conscience and our feet on the ground. CDP ensures that preparedness is localized, gender sensitive, inclusive of indigenous peoples, persons with disabilities, and senior citizens like me. They hold the grassroots trust that money cannot buy and policies cannot force. Fourth is academia, represented by the University of the Philippines Resilience Institute, or UPRI. They provide the scientific bedrock. They ensure we are not preparing for the disasters of the past, but predicting the hazards of the future through advanced climate modeling, data analytics, and rigorous academic validation. PhilPrep is the space where these four pillars do not merely meet, they co-own the agenda. Now, let's look at this in action. Project Talaghay, by the way, Talaghay is a Filipino word, which means in English, resilience. So Project Talaghay in Tarlac City is our lighthouse. It isn't just about hardware like Internet of Things, sensors. It's about the marriage of technology and community. By actively involving academic institutions, local government agencies, private sector partners, and civil society organizations, Project Talaghay promotes a model of localized disaster preparedness that is inclusive, data-driven, and sustainable. A 4-level early warning system that tells residents exactly what to do when sensors hit critical marks. This is a scalable localization model that we intend to replicate nationwide. The initiative underscores the value of multi-sectoral collaboration in building resilience from the ground up. Now, how do you take a partnership of this scale and make it permanent? You need a multi-year phased roadmap. You cannot institutionalize a complex multi-stakeholder ecosystem overnight. PhilPrep has mapped out meticulously timeline running from now through the year 2033. We are currently in phase 1, which is institutional anchoring. This phase is all about creating the legal DNA of the partnership. We are moving beyond memoranda of understanding into formal executive orders and legislative amendments that establish a permanent multi-sectoral secretariat desk. This ensures that no matter who is elected to office, the PhilPrep desk remains staffed, funded, and operational. Phase 2, which will span from 2027 and 2028, is subnational localization. It is a known gap for national partnerships to become Manila-centric or stuck in the capital city. Phase 2 breaks that gap by replicating the quadripartite structure in our regions. We are establishing regional PhilPrep hubs for regional civil defense offices, local business chambers, provincial NGO networks, and state universities and colleges form their own localized 4-in-1 cells. Phase 3, running from 2029 to 2033, represents a full systematic maturity. By this stage, PhilPrep's operational protocols will be seamlessly embedded into the local development plans of municipalities across the country. More importantly, it marks the point where the platform transitions to a fully self-sustaining model driven by domestic capital and institutionalized public budget lines. Next on the slide, as I close, I want to highlight three best practices for our fellow NPPs. First, formalize early, get your quadripartite pillars in writing. Second, keep communities at the center. If residents didn't draw the map, they won't follow the plan. And third, embrace digital governance. Use technology like Internet of Things, not as a gimmick, but as an integrated decision support tool. So my fellow resilience champions, disaster preparedness is not a line item expense in a national budget. It is the fundamental foundation upon which all sustainable development, economic growth, and human dignity are built. Every single dollar we invest in institutionalizing structural preparedness saves us lots of dollars in emergency response and post-disaster reconstruction. More importantly, it saves lives, families, livelihoods, communities, and the future of everyone. So in the Philippines, we have chosen to break down the walls that divided us. We have chosen to stop operating in silos. We have committed to the path of institutionalization, binding our four core sectors together into an indissoluble, permanent national ecosystem. We are moving forward under a simple, unyielding mantra: four sectors, one nation, continuous readiness. We do not claim to have solved every problem. We are still learning and continue to learn, still evolving, and still facing massive climate challenges every single year. But we have built a structural engine that allows us to face those challenges together systematically and permanently. So we invite every national preparedness partnership here today to collaborate with us, download our blueprints, and share your own innovations so we can strengthen our global network. Thank you for your exceptional time, your shared dedication to humanity, and your continued leaderships in building a safer and more resilient world. Maraming salamat po, and God bless everyone. That ends my presentation.
Thank you so much, Director Vic, and really congratulations and great work that PhilPrep has demonstrated to the region for bringing forward a strong example of how multi-stakeholder collaboration can support institutionalized and locally grounded disaster preparedness can be enhanced. Thank you so much, Director Vic. And now we would move.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yes, thank you, sir. And now we will move to the first previous country experience of Laos PDR. And I'm again honored to invite Ms. Vimala, Director, Disaster Control and Recovery Division, Department of Social Welfare, Laos PDR. Ms. Vimala, I would request you to take the floor and I shall share your presentation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you again. Good morning, everyone, and thank you to ADPC to give me the opportunity to share the experience on of the Laos Disaster Preparedness Partnership, or LDPP. Today, I will present the LDPP has been institutionalized within the National Disaster Risk Management Coordination Mechanism in Laos PDR. Next slide, please. Today presentation I will divide into six main parts. I will briefly explain each sector and highlight the key lessons and progress made in Laos PDR. Next slide, please. Next, please. No, go back again. Laos PDR faced many types of hazard and disaster, including flood, storm, landslide, disease outbreak, and other. Among these, fast and drought are the most frequent disaster occurs almost every year. This disaster affected people life, agriculture, infrastructure, public health, school, and overall national development. Therefore, strengthening disaster preparedness coordination among all stakeholders is very important to Laos PDR. Disaster continue affected development in Laos PDR. So preparedness and resilience are national priority. Next slide, please. To strengthening disaster management, Laos PDR adopted the Disaster Management Law in 2029. The law focused on three important components. First, prevention, second, control, and third, recovery. The Disaster Management Law provides the foundation for disaster prevention, control, and recovery. Next, please. Next. One of the key national priorities, strengthening preparedness, response, and recovery capacity. Laos PDR recognized that disaster risk reduction cannot be done by the government alone. Therefore, we cooperate closely with UN agency, development partner, INGO, ASEAN, civil society, and private sector. To important, the national framework support this work. First, the National Disaster Management Risk Reduction Strategy 2021 to 2030. Second, the 10 National Socio-Economic Development Plan 2026 to 2030. This framework helps guide national efforts towards resilient and sustainable development. Partnership and coordination are essential for strengthening disaster resilience. Next, please. The ASEAN Preparedness Partnership, or APP, is a regional multi-stakeholder platform that brings together a government, private sector, and civil society organizations to strengthening disaster preparedness. APP has three main pillars: local preparedness, national partnership, and regional engagement. So, Laos PDR joined the APP in 2023 through the establishment of the Laos Disaster Preparedness Partnership, or LDPP. Next, please. Next, please. Laos PDR officially established LDPP and joined APP in 2023. The objective of LDPP is to strengthening cooperation among the key sectors: government, represented by Department of Social Welfare; private sector, represented by the National Chamber of Commerce and Industry; and civil society, representative through LCCC. LDPP creates a platform for these sectors to work together on disaster preparedness and response. LDPP promotes coordination action through a tripartite partnership. Next, please. LDPP is important because each stakeholder bring different strength. Government provide leadership and coordination. Private sector provide innovation, investment, and resources. And civil society provides strong community network and local engagement. Together, LDPP creates an all-of-society approach for disaster preparedness and resilience. So LDPP strengthens collaboration by combining the strengthening of all sectors. Next, please. LDPP has several important functions: strengthening multi-stakeholder coordination, promoting collaboration, engaging sharing responsibility, and expanding support to vulnerable communities, and supporting national and regional disaster framework. This helps make disaster management more inclusive and community-centered. LDPP help connect national coordination with committee level action. Next, please. A major exit was made on 30 June 2023 when the Vice Chair of the Central Disaster Management Committee opposed the institutional of LDPP. This means LDPP was officially embedded into the National Disaster Management structure. Next, please. Next, please. Role and responsibility were clearly defined among government, private sector, and civil society organizations. It's important because it supports long-term sustainability beyond project-based activity. Institutionalization helps ensure sustainability and strong coordination. Next, please. In practice, institutionalization also requires operation mechanism. For example, LNCC established a disaster management committee and TOR. And LCCC is developing TOR for civil society coordination mechanism. These efforts help make the partnership more functional and effective. Institutionalization is not only the policy level, but also operation in practice. Next, please. Laos PDR is the continuing effort to strengthening the LDPP by integrating LDPP into the national DRR plans and aligning with the National Development Plan and embedding LDPP role into sectoral and local plans. This helps mainstream disaster preparedness into border development planning. LDPP is being integrated into long-term national development system. Next, please. For the financing and resources mobilization, to sustain LDPP resource mobilization is very important. Potential resources for includes government funding, private sector support, civil society pool funds. Next, please. And support from development partner. Diversified financing is necessary for long-term sustainability. Sustainable partnership requires sustainable financing. Next, please. In the conclusion, LDPP demonstrates how multi-stakeholder partnership can strengthen disaster preparedness, localization, and resilience. Institutionalizing LDPP helps ensure strong coordination, shared responsibility, sustainability, and long-term resilience in Laos PDR. Thank you very much, everyone, for the attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vimala, for sharing Laos PDR's experience. Your presentation has provided important reflections on institutionalization, national coordination, and the role of partnerships in strengthening disaster preparedness system. And we appreciate your efforts and congratulate LDPP for their work on ground. We will now move to the open forum and moderated discussion, which will be led and moderated by Ms. Yati Wu, Technical Coordinator, Preparedness and Health Risk Management, ADPC. The discussion will help synthesize key insights from today's presentations and reflect on practical pathways for sustaining multi-stakeholder localization mechanisms. Over to you, Yati, and the panelists.
Thank you, Ankit. And thank you very much to both of our speakers from the Laos and the Philippines, and for those very insightful presentations and for sharing your country's experiences with us today. I think both presentations really highlighted the importance of how the multi-stakeholder partnerships can really strengthen the localization and also preparedness systems and moving toward more sustainable and long-term coordination mechanisms. So perhaps to begin the discussion, I think I would like to start with our colleague from the Laos, Ms. Vimala. And I think one of the very interesting aspects from your presentation from the Laos experience is that the institutionalization of Laos Disaster Preparedness Partnership, LTPP, within the National Disaster Management Mechanism. You also really emphasize the point around the LTPP institutionalization is now being translated into the operational mechanisms and also the stakeholders structures in practice. So my question to you is that from your perspective, what practical changes or maybe the early results have you seen so far in terms of preparedness and also the coordination or maybe engagement among the stakeholders? So the floor is yours, Ms. Vimala.
Okay, thank you very much for your question. If we talk about how different, before we don't have the LDPP mechanism, and we just only have the government structure that we have the coordination, we have the disaster management committee in the 4 level, so that we also during the emergency time, we also have the structure like we have the mechanism to coordinate with the IAAC mechanism like a UN agency. But when we have the LDPP come to our structure or our mechanism, that the LDPP is different because is adopted a multi-stakeholder partnership approach, bring together government, private sector, and civil society on an equal footing. Is go beyond like a traditional government leads coordination and promote share responsibility and collaboration among all actors, so that we can share and we can work together, and then is helping to the preparedness and respond well doing. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ms. Vimala, for those reflections. I think and many countries across the regions are also, I think, currently exploring the similar questions around those topics. So thank you for those reflections. And I would now like to turn to our colleague from the Philippines, Mr. Vic. So we all know that the Philippines has a very long-term, experience in the multi-stakeholder disaster preparedness and the coordination mechanisms. And one of the things that really stood out to me from your experience is also that, that deliberate effort that you really move from the project-based coordination arrangements toward more like a structured disaster preparedness mechanism, which is really embedded within the national DR systems. And also, you also emphasize about the multi-stakeholder and full of society approach collaboration, which I think is quite often easier said than done in practice, especially when the multi-stakeholders are involved. So my question to you is that what do you think has been the most important in helping the FIPRA to move from the project-based partner-supported platform into a more like a nationally owned government anchor mechanism, especially around the coordination? What governance or the coordination arrangements have been most critical in keeping all of the stakeholders together, working very effectively over time? So the floor is yours, Mr. Vic.
Thank you, ma'am. I was kidding my team that if the question is difficult, I would call them in to assist me. But anyway, thank you for the question. The strengths of what we have shared in the Philippine experience is, of course, the strong alliances and partnerships with the different stakeholders. In fact, as I have shared a while ago, the 4-pillar framework, you're talking of the academe, the civil society, the private sector, and of course, the local government units. They are our strong partners. Together with the national government, we have a cohesive team where if there are disasters and calamities, whether these are natural or induced or human induced, the skill sets are already embedded. Recently, I visited Tarlac, Project Talaghay, meaning resilience in English. We can see there that it's not just Internet of Things and sensors, it's the collaboration of the different stakeholders, and of course, the continuous capacity building in terms of sharing of best practices, documentation. And like what we're doing now, we have heard from our colleagues from the different countries. Again, we have increased the knowledge. And thank you to our esteemed colleagues for sharing these very nice practices and competencies where it went through a lot of litmus testing, so to speak. So another area where we are trying to improve is on connectivity. If we are in a weather disturbance, or if there are disasters and calamities, and being within the ring of fire, sometimes connectivity is disrupted. So it is a must that we convey that critical information down to ground zero, so to speak. And we could come up with a very nice response. In fact, what the Department of Defense, our good secretary, Gibo Chudoro, kept on reminding us that it is important to do early warning and early response as well. This is to save lives, preempt the destruction of property. And it is also important, shared by our partner pillars from DOST FEBOX, from DILG, DSWD as response, and for recovery and rehabilitation is the Department of Development. And the strong coordination, collaborative workings between the thematic pillars, and of course, partners from local government, private sector, and the academe makes the workings for preparedness, mitigation, response, and recovery seamless. So that is my part to share for your question, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vic, for really highlighting these very interesting experiences from the Philippines. I think it's really very insightful to hear from the FEPRAP model, especially around the way how it really brings the government, the civil society, and the private sector and academia into a one shared preparedness platform. And regarding the private sector, I would like to go back to our colleague from the Laos, Ms. Bimala. And in your presentation also, you really mentioned about the establishment of the new private sector disaster management committee under the Chamber of Commerce, LNCCI. And we have also seen that during the very recent hailstorm response in the country, the private sector actors really step up to support the affected communities with the relief materials and the supplies. So it is really encouraging to see that private sector is now really getting engaged more formally into the national coordination platform. So I was really curious to understand your perspective from like how do you see this new private sector disaster management committee really helping strengthen and coordinate these efforts during the maybe future emergencies or future disaster preparedness efforts as part of the LTPP. So the floor is yours, Ms. Bimala.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for the question. Is it the question that I would like to share with Philippines also? I heard from the Philippines have the experience for the work with the private sector. For the Lao PDR with the LDPP mechanism that we starting to encourage from the private sector to work with the government for disaster preparedness and response. So that this is also the challenge for us also. Now the private sector starting to make the TOR mechanism on their sector, and also they try to have the how can I say, the DM funds in the private sector also, so that's one we starting from our mechanism just really starting, and we also try to we want to effort to give the private sector is the stand next to the government and support the government during the preparedness or emergency response. So regarding to the Filipino share the experience, I also heard they try to have I don't know the PDRF from the Philippines. This is the institutes that the support from the private sector to support the government during the emergency or not. So that for us, the private sector continued innovation, technical expert, and resource. In also, I try to support preparedness and response effort through investment, logistic, and business country support during the disaster. That we effort have the private sector to support the government like that.
Thank you so much, Ms. Vimala, for this sharing the experiences and your the reflections around the private sector engagement in Laos. And hearing from both the presentations, I think both the countries, the Philippines and the Laos, really, their experiences really reflect the different stages of institutionalization journey. And but the both presentations also really highlighted the importance of moving from the project-based to a more nationally owned long-term coordination mechanisms. I think this is also one of the challenges the countries around the region are currently maybe navigating, particularly around how to really sustain the localization efforts. So perhaps as a reflection question to both of our speakers, is that from your experiences from the FIPREP in the Philippines and the LDPP in the Laos, what is your maybe key lesson or the practical recommendation that you would share with the countries that are still in the early stages of building and sustaining these multi-stakeholder partnerships for the localization and disaster preparedness? So perhaps we begin the response with the Philippines first, then followed by the Laos.
Yes, I thought it's ladies first, ma'am. Well, thank you again for the question. The challenge is sustainability, capacity building. Leaderships come and go, but of course, the four-pillar framework that was established with PhilPrep and the other partners are going to be there on a long-term basis. As we change leaderships, policy guidelines, and we try to adapt to the technologies. Like, for example, now we have AI, but of course, we are very, very particular about the use of technology because this sometimes if you don't come up with the proper protocol for using advanced technologies, there might be false positives as part of our mitigation or even down to preparedness response and recovery and rehabilitation. So what I would like to share to our partners and colleagues is that, like what I've said earlier, the strength here is the sustained parameters, the capacity building measures. So the exchanges that we try to do as lessons learned are documented, and then we apply the technology. That's why in the four-pillar framework, the academe is basically the science. So translated into common language, it is easily understood by the people on the ground. A good example is Yolanda. There was early warning, but if the people will not understand that the effect of that storm surge, they tend not, they fear to leave their properties. So we need to give more premium to that for our communities, the people on the ground, especially at ground zero, to know the dangers of the effects of the weather anomalies, whether it's a storm surge, a shear line, or a superstorm, and the effects of it to the people and the communities as well. Of course, we cannot just rely on national government. The strong partnerships, like of course the private sector, they have a very sustainable logistic support systems or a logistics hub. So the supply chain should be not disrupted. So a mix of that, plus of course the trust provided by civil society would add to the strong coordinative workings and discipline, while in a very inconvenience scenario or environment. We learned so much from this info sharing, like in other countries, when there is a queue for relief, you see the discipline of the people on the ground. So this we can avoid looting or very unfortunate events to happen when you are in that very inconvenient state. And of course, the local government units which provide the enforcement so that we can achieve the objectives of when we are in the recovery and rehabilitation phase of the effort once a disaster hits or we are most affected. So these are some of a few things that we would like to share from the Philippine side. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Mr. Abid, for sharing all these very important points around this, the logistics and translating the science into that, to be more actionable, the things that the communities can really take forward regarding the, preparedness efforts. And maybe the same question that we would like to go back to our Ms. Bimala from the Laos. So just to repeat the question is that, what would be maybe the key lesson or the practical recommendation that you would share with the countries in the region that are really, stay in the early stages of, building and sustaining these multi-stakeholder partnerships for the localization and preparedness, disaster preparedness. So, it's yours, Ms. Bimala.
Thank you for question. If we talk about the lesson learned from we starting to have the LDPP, and then we starting from the support from ADPC to starting to have the ADPP mechanism, so that after that, we think that we are also exploring different sources from the funding and support, particularly the contribution from to the three sector to have some budget to really like the LDPP mechanism. So if we talk about the institutionalization, it means LDPP has been formally embedded into our national disaster risk management system. It's not no longer project from the ADPC support, but recognizes coordination mechanism with the defined role within the national structure. So that when we have this mechanism, so from the private sector and the civil society and government, we effort to work closely together, and then to capacity from the localization from the local level to have the capacity with all the three sectors of our from the government and private sector and civil society in the local area also. So that it means that now we're starting to have the new mechanism. It's a long-term mechanism that we have to put and support for each other to work together on the disaster preparedness and response.
Thank you so much, and I think our time has come to an end. So I think thank you very much to once again to all of our speakers for really sharing your very insightful experiences and the reflections. I think today's discussions really highlighted the several important topics around the institutionalization, the governance, and also the sustainability of localization efforts through multi-stakeholder partnerships from the Laos and the Philippines experiences. I hope that today's discussions also provide the useful insights for other countries and the partners around the region that are working to strengthen the disaster preparedness and the locally led actions. Thank you very much. Back to you, Ankit.
Thank you so much, Yati, for facilitating this discussion and bringing out the nuances from the country. We would now come to the final segment of today's webinar, and it is my honor to invite Dr. Valerie Bemo, Deputy Director, Emergency Response, 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐧𝐢 Foundation, who has been with us nearly a decade supporting this APP program to deliver her closing remarks and extend the invitation to the webinar 2 of the series. Dr. Valerie, may I kindly invite you to take the floor.
Thank you. And thank you so much for the honors to be here. It's late, but I'm glad I was able to stay to listen to the conversation, as this was really a good reminder about what it is that we are talking about. From Aslam, who really give the support from an organization. I think we have to commend ADPC and as an organization to take the leap of faith, to trust, and using the ADPC kind of like relationship with countries, support and technical and people to be able to work with the country. And more important, I think one thing that Cicera mentioned, when we started the conversation, we didn't know where we were going. And I think that, again, is something that is really important as an organization to take the lift of the trust to say, we don't know where we are going, but we think it makes sense because we believe that localization is not just a word. We know from our household, from our community, villages, even if it's not the humanitarian, unless you put people at the center, unless you put your kids at the center, unless you put in your household, in your village, in your workforce, everybody part of it, you can look at it, and there's one proverb in Africa where we say that if you want to go, if you got to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And I think that is something that the conversation today really highlighted: the partnership, the multi-sectorial. We cannot do it on our own. One institution and one stakeholder cannot be, no matter how strong, how rich as a private sector, how strong as a policy, how close to the community as the non-profit organization alone is useless. And I think that was all, again, part of, I like the word from Philippines about the one nation and together all the partners, because only then we can bring each of us, no matter who we are, how we are, have something to contribute. But it's a part of our accountability, but it's also a responsibility. And it's actually a gratitude to be able to find a space with countries who have taken that trust to say, we want to do it together. However, it was highlighted a lot of challenges. Of course, working with people, institution, process and time and money, of course, present challenges. But challenges should not be a stop or a break. As they mentioned, we are here to break the world. We are here to, and we know with one hand we cannot, but with multiple hands we can actually really open. It's not even about breaking the world. I would say it's about open a door that actually bring everybody together. And with this, I just wanted to also continue all of us to think about this is an opportunity. We are in a really good time. We are in a difficult time in the world with more crises, more disasters, and less money. But it's also an opportunity because we saw country waking up, realizing that they have more power than they think, and they can step up to make it themselves what it is. We'll be having similarity. We can learn from each other, but each country will bring their own thing. And I think I'm really glad with the webinar. It's good to see experience from Laos and the Philippines. Philippines have been an experience, and I think I've been joining the APP from the beginning. But Laos, I'm really impressed because I remember last year when we were talking about Laos, this was the lucky 7. We have all the words. It was the last baby, but seeing it really stepping up to that. It's actually a really a pleasure for me to see where we are doing. And with that, I want to invite everybody. I think you see how rich it is. You see how dynamic. We have so much experience. And I want to invite you for the webinar too. That will happen on June 18. And this will be more close to the center, close to the people. It will be about localization at the front line. How do we advance locally led disaster preparedness? And I think I will invite all of you to come back to learn together and to share, because together we can make a better world, we can save lives, save people, and this is why we are here together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Valerie, for your closing reflections towards making this world better. To formally close, I would, on behalf of ADPC and Asian Preparedness Partnership, I would sincerely like to thank Mr. Aslam Parvez, Dr. Sisira Madura Peramma, Ms. Ronilda Ko, Ms. Vimala, Director Vic, Ms. Yati, and Dr. Valerie Bemo for their valuable contributions. I would also like to thank all the participants for joining us today and for your continued engagement in advancing localization, preparedness, and multi-stakeholder partnership across the region. And to conclude, I would request Ms. Ronnie to say a final thank you for engaging in this webinar.
Thank you, everyone, for participating in this webinar. To our partners, APP member countries, as well as those who have actually, participated, who are not actually part of our Asian Preparedness Partnership countries. Thank you, and see you again on the next webinar, as announced by our Dr. Valerie Bemo. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. God bless everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.